Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to another aesthetic imaging video tutorial. Today we're going to be working on some arts and crafts and making a paper cutout video. Actually, I'm showing you how to take regular elements in After Effects and make them look like they're cut out of paper, or I guess torn out of paper. As you can see, some of these edges are fuzzy. You got some white from the paper being shown here. We even add a little bit of detail with some shading. A little three-dimensional, huh? I'm also going to be doing a second part, which is going to showcase the actual animation part of it. I felt they're just two completely different subjects. And as usual, the project files will be available to download, so you can check them out and follow along. All right, so let's get started. All right, so first thing we're going to do to get started is we're going to work on these waves. So I'm going to go over here, create a new composition, and we're just going to call this, how about main comp? There we go. And we're going to make this 1920 by 1080, 23.976 frames per second, and about 10 seconds long is fine. So let's hit OK. Now we have a blank new canvas to work on. All right, so first thing we're going to do to get started is we're going to go over to here and we're going to right click, go to New, Solid. And we're just going to call this Water. So now we're going to go to our color and we're going to pick our color and we're going to make this blue. Get a nice little blue hue going on here. How about that? Maybe something like that. All right, let's hit OK. And let's hit OK. And now we have our water. Let's make that a little bit darker. Now I'm seeing it, the whole picture. We're going to hit Shift Command Y to bring up our solid settings. And let's just make that a bit darker. Maybe something like that. 201, 157. Hit OK. So we got our water. Cool beans. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to this rectangle mask tool, or rectangle tool, and we're just going to double click. As you can see, nothing has happened. Well, something has happened, but I have a little thing turned off. So I'm going to hit Shift Command H, and now we can see our mask. And it has created a mask all around our composition automatically. So we can double click that, and let's just take this top and let's bring it down to about maybe a third of the way. Something like that. And then we can just hit enter to finish that off. Now I'm going to right click on this water layer and I'm going to go to layer styles and we're going to go to stroke. So this is opened up. Let's twirl open our stroke here and let's select this color, but then make it brighter, maybe a little less saturated and a little more on the greenish side. There, something like that. Now we can't really see what's going on, so we can take our size and we can just bring that up a bit. And I think something like 25 should do the trick. Yeah. Now we want to make sure that this is set to normal and that the position is on the outside. And the opacity is at 100. All right, now let's make some ripples in the water. So let's create a new solid. So right click, new solid, and we'll call this ripples. And for a color, we're just going to leave that as is. Now let's hide this layer by poking out its eyeball, and let's break out our pen tool. All right, so we're going to make a click with our pen tool, create a point, and I'm going to hold down Shift and just make another click. So we got a straight line. Now we want to do this across the whole surface. Now if we try to create a new point here, it'll connect the dots. This is not what we want. We want individual little lines. To get out of it, we can just click the layer and then make some more points. Click the layer. You want to vary the size of your ripples as well. I think that's fine for now. So what we're going to do is hit V to bring up our move tool, and we're going to hit M, and we're going to close all these. Select them and just close them up. All right, so let's duplicate our masks by hitting Command D, and let's just move them over. Maybe offset them like so. Something like this to make it not look like repeated. Then we can take all the masks again, duplicate them, and let's just move them over. And we've reached the other side. Now that should be fine. If you want to do more or vary them up a little bit more, that's fine, but I'm not going to. So let's turn our layer back on, and you'll see that we still have a solid blue background. So if we go to Effects and Presets, and we type in Stroke, we can go to Generate Stroke and add that onto our layer, our ripples layer. Now, under here, we want to select all masks. And let's just turn off our lines for a second. So Shift Command H again. Now you see we have these white lines.
Ooh, white lines, visions, dreams, and passion.
Now we want to change this to this color, but darker. Yeah, something like that. All right, so let's take our brush size up here, and let's make that a little bit bigger. What do you say? Now we can mess with the spacing if we want. If you, the more dots, the more computing power you're going to need. So if you want to turn this down, you know, a little bit, that's fine. Maybe bring up the size. All right, so we still have our blue background. It's annoying. So let's do this. Paint style on transparent. Oh, look at that. All right, so we have our water, you know, more or less. Let's take our stroke. Let's turn that down to 20. Yeah. All right, so we're going to select our ripples and water, and we're going to Shift Command C to pre-compose, and we're going to call this Water PC, not PA, PC for pre-composition. I've said this in other videos, but whenever I am creating kind of like a procedural workflow, I like to keep the most base of the effect, the thing that's driving it. I like to put a PC at the end. It just kind of lets me know that this is the base of the effect. All right, so we're going to hit OK. Now that we have our water PC all set up, let's right click down in the empty void here and go new, not muscle spasm, not a light. We don't want to create a light. Not yet. That's the next part of this video. Anyway, new adjustment layer, and we're going to call this water effects. So water effects, what does that mean? Obviously, water needs waves, wave warp. That's what water needs. Wave warp. Now we have waves. Let's maybe make that wider, a little bit taller. Basically, the overall look of your waves is up to you. So we got our wave height and wave width. We're going to go with something like this. All right, so wave speed, let's check that out. All right, so that's a little too fast. Let's try 0.3. Maybe a little bit faster, 0.5. Yeah, we'll do 0.5. All right, so pinning. We're going to go and do horizontal edge. That will pin it to the horizontal edges, the top and the bottom. Now, if we did all edges, you can see it pins it to here, the left and the right side too, and it kind of brings our waves down a little bit. So let's just do horizontal edges. All right, so now we need some microwaves. So for that, we're going to add turbulent displace. All right, so this turbulent displace is going to add some just variation. So maybe let's turn down the amount a little bit and then turn down the size. Maybe turn down the size a little bit more. How about that? Something like this. I don't know. Yeah. All right, complexity, we're going to bring that up to 2. And we want to add some evolution animation in here. So we're going to Alt-click on the stopwatch. We're going to type in time times maybe 100. We'll see how that looks. There we go. Now we got some a little wave movement as well as the overarching larger waves. All right, so now I want these waves to actually be going in the opposite direction because right now they're going from left to right. I want them to go from right to left. So let's just take this 90 and let's just pop a little minus sign in front of that. Just pop it right in there and then hit enter. Boom, opposite direction. Now for the real meat and potatoes. So what we want to do is add a roughen edges to our water. So we're going to go to effects and presets and type in roughen edges. And we're going to add that to our water PC. All right, so we got our roughen edges. Let's increase the border. And we want kind of like a bigger offset here at first. Complexity, we'll leave it 2. Edge sharpness, let's turn that up. Make sure we got crisp edges. Now what we want to do is take our roughen edges and hit Command D to duplicate it. Now for this one, we're going to turn the scale down, like a lot. So it's nice and fuzzy. Maybe turn down the border. And we're going to take our edge sharpness and we're just going to turn that down. Way down to like, whoa, not that far down. Like 0.87. And let's take this complexity. Let's make it 3 because we want a little more fuzziness. And we're just going to keep on adjusting some things here and there till we get something that we like. There you go. Something like this. Maybe turn down the border even further. All right, so you'll notice that we have a little bit of an issue with our edges here. They're being roughened, and we don't want that. Let's just select our water PC, hit S, and we're just going to scale it up. Problem solved. All right, so now we have this nice little fuzzy paper texture. Now, how do we get that white background? Because, you know, when you tear paper, it doesn't tear evenly. And if you have an image on one side and then just the blank paper on the other, you're going to catch some of that blank paper. So what we're going to do is take our water PC and we're going to hit Command D to duplicate it. Now let's turn off our top layer. So now we're going to go to Generate Fill and add that to our bottom water PC. Now let's change this. Let's go water main and let's call this water paper. How about that? Now, we want to change our fill here. So you want the color to be kind of like an off-white and not completely on the brightness. Let's turn down the brightness a little bit. Because we're going to be adding a paper texture on top using the overlay blend mode. And it won't show up on pure white. But if we just make it just a little bit darker than pure white, 85% is fine. We're going to get some of that detail showing up. All right. And maybe like 8 to 10% saturation and a slightly warmer hue. All right. So we're going to take our fill and we're going to bring that to the top. All right. So now let's turn on our water main again. And you'll notice that our water paper doesn't show up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to change a few things around. Maybe bring this complexity down to 1. Maybe bring up the border. Mess with the size a little bit. You know, we just want some areas showing through. Again, find a place on that evolution that you like. And if you want, you can go into the Roughen Edges Part 2 And maybe they change that around as well. Maybe change that to 2. Yeah, something like that. Another thing we want to add is that little sense of depth with a little bit of shading, a little bit of shadow. And to pull that off, we're going to go and duplicate our water main, Command D to duplicate that. Let's move this one up to the top so we don't have to change that name or change 2 names. And let's change this to water shadow. All right, we're going to take our fill. We're going to take another fill and we're going to add that to our shadow. This time we're going to make it dark. Maybe turn down the saturation. Actually, let's turn up the saturation a little bit and let's make it blue. Let's go over to the blue. Bring some blues into it. Yeah, something like that. All right, so we have our shadow. So now what we want to do is make sure that we have our move tool selected. So hit V, or you can go up here, right here. Yeah, selection tool. And we're going to do a very complicated move. You see those arrow keys on your keyboard? Just boop it over a couple times. All right, we want to add a little bit of a blur. So fast box blur. That's under blur and sharpen. And we're going to add that to our shadow and just bring that up a little bit. Nice little shadow going on. And repeat edge pixels. All right, so we have a little bit of shading going on now. So I've added this back white layer so you can see the shadow and how it kind of extends onto the background, like past our actual waves. Now we only want it to show up on the white part. Let's make this easier to see. All right, so what we can do is go over to our Preserve Underlying Transparency and turn that on for this layer. And that will cut everything out that isn't above an alpha channel. All right, so let's undo that so that I can move this back into place. All right, so this is moved back into place and let's turn that on. Okay, so I'm thinking that our water paper is a little too dark and I don't know. Yeah, let's just turn that up a bit. Maybe turn down the saturation to about 5%. Yeah, that looks better. All right, so now that we have that base effect going on, let's really make this look like paper. So we can go in our assets folder and paper textures, and we can just pick a paper texture. All right, so for the waves, we're going to go with paper texture number 2, and we're just going to add that on top of everything. Now we can scale this down and maybe move this to where we want it. Maybe something like right there. Now we're going to set this to overlay. Now the same thing's happening. We want to cut this off where it just doesn't appear on the waves. So we can just turn on our Preserve Underlying Transparency. Now I think I'm going to go back and change some of the coloring because it's a little bright now. We can make sure that we select this window right here, our composition window, go to View, New Viewer, and then go into our water and just start changing things around. So this way we can see what we're doing. Let's make this a little darker. Let's open up our stroke. Change that a little bit. Maybe bring down the saturation, bring down the brightness. And our ripples, yeah, let's bring that down a little bit too. Now we can just close this up, unlock that, and go back into our main comp. Now, if you want to make this paper texture stand out a little bit more, we can add a curves. Let's add our curves on there. There we go. Let's really get our paper texture in there. Voila. We have a thing that looks like it was cut out of paper. Now what we're going to do is take all of this, select everything. You can also hit Command A to select all. And we're going to pre-compose that, Shift Command C, and we're going to call this Waves PC. All right, so now that we have our Waves PC, we can duplicate that, and let's move this down a little bit. Maybe move this bottom one down a little bit. All right, so let's rename this to waves front and waves middle. Let's take our waves front. Let's hit S and let's make sure that our dimensions are unlinked. And we're going to pop a little minus sign in front of this first 100. And that'll just flip it. So now if we play this back, give the waves moving in opposite directions, I think it makes it look neat.
I just think they're neat.
All right, so let's take our waves front and let's duplicate that and move that to the bottom. All right, so let's take our waves front 2 and rename that to waves back. Now let's take that. Maybe move the mid down. Or how about this? Move the front up a little bit. Then take them all and just drag them down. So this whole effect was just created with a simple, mostly just a simple block of blue. All right, so maybe I'm looking at this and I'm thinking maybe I want my waves to be a little bit, whoop, we went too far. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking our waves need to be a little bit thinner. So let's take our wave width, let's bring that down just a little bit. Once we go into our main comp, we'll see that automatically updates. And I'm thinking maybe we want to bring the height down just a little bit. There we go. Just mess with it until you get something that works. So that's basically the effect. Now let's go through and just do the rest, you know? All right, so for this, we're going to bring in this textures.com Arials
0091_1_M.
I'm going to leave a link in the description along with the project files so that if you want to download it and follow along. All right, so let's bring down that sky. Let's turn up the scale. Let's fit this onto our screen here. Bring that up. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to pre-compose this. Move all attributes, and we'll just call this Sky PC. Now let's go into our Sky PC, and let's just add another paper texture in here. All right, for our sky background, we're going to be using paper texture 12. We're going to throw that on there. Maybe hit S to scale it to size. Maybe bring that up. Something like that. And we're just going to hit overlay. I want to add a little contrast to our sky image. So we're going to add a curves on top of that, and we're just going to create a little S curve. Now, if you think that's a little too much on the paper texture, we can hit T to bring down the transparency a little bit. Give it a little more subtle approach. All right, so let's finish building out this scene. Let's add our glass bottle. And we're going to add that in between the middle and the back waves. Let's hit S to scale that down a little bit. Now that we've scaled that down, let's kind of move it into place. Right here. And let's pre-compose that. Shift Command C. Let's call this Glass Bottle PC. Let's go into our glass bottle. And let's get to work on adding our roughen edges. Now, to make this completely easier, let's go into our waves and select our water main. And let's go and just select these, copy them. Let's close up some of these that we don't need. And let's just paste it to this bottle. Now for this, we want to bring up the scale just a little bit. Maybe bring down the border. A little bit, I don't know. Change this to 3. Yeah, why not? All right, so let's duplicate our glass bottle. Command D. And let's go back into our waves. And copy that fill. Glass bottle. And we're just going to paste that onto our fill. And of course, we're going to go in and change some of these settings. Put on our black background so we can see what we're doing. And of course, mess with the evolution a little bit till we get a different look. Well, different look than our original offset. Maybe set that back down to 2, maybe even 1. Yeah, we'll do 1. All right, let's move our fill to the top here. And let's duplicate our first guy again. Bring in another fill. Make this one our dark one. Let's move that over. Maybe add a fast box blur. And of course, boop. Now let's add our paper texture. And let's go with paper texture number 5. Let's add that to the top. Scale that into position. I'll scale it and then move it into position. Let's hit overlay. This way we can actually see what we're doing. If you want, you can even rotate it by 90 degrees. Let's make it vertical. Scale down and just move it into place. And of course, we can add another curves on top. You know, create a little S curve. And of course, turn on preserve underlying transparency. Now we have our bottle all set up. Now let's create a sun. Now we're going to do that by going into here, create a new composition. We're going to make this 500 by 500. And we're going to turn off lock aspect ratio so that we can achieve that. 500 by 500, a square. And we'll call this sun comp. All right, so now we have our square. What we can do is click and hold on this rectangle tool and go to the star tool. Now let's just add a star. We're going to make our stroke kind of this brownish color. That just happened to be the one that I wanted. All right. So 44, 41, 29 are our numbers for this brown. But we do want to turn that stroke down a little bit there. All right. We need more points. So we can open up our contents, polystar, twirl that open, polystar path, and we can set our points to 10. Maybe take this outer radius and bring it in just a little bit, you know, just so we're not clipping through our boundaries here. And if it's not already aligned, you can go into the Align tab and make sure that's centered, which it already is. All right, so another thing we want to change is our fill. And we're going to make this kind of like a reddish hue. Something like that. So let's select our polystar and duplicate it. So let's go into our polystar 2, polystar path 1, and let's go into rotation. And we're going to rotate this 19 degrees exactly so that all our spikes are in between the spikes of the lower one. And we want to take our polystar 2 and we want to change the fill to be more of a yellower hue. So now we can go up and we can work on our sun even further. Let's create the center by choosing the ellipse tool, double clicking on that, going into our ellipse path and just kind of bringing that in till it's just over the center like so. And for this, we want to change the fill to be an even brighter yellow, maybe a little bit less saturated too. Something like that. Actually, all these fills, let's make them a little bit darker, more saturated. Let's get some color in our sun, you know? Polystar 2, select that. Bump up our saturation. And ellipse 1. And we'll bring up the saturation a little bit. Now let's unselect our layer. And let's make a little face, a little smiley face. Take our pen tool, create a nice little curve, click out of it, and just make a second one. Our jovial sun. Now for the smile, we're going to create just this real quick. You know, if we select this angle or this little handle here and move it, it also affects this side. And conversely, it does the same thing. All right, so let's take this. Let's hold down Alt and just move this down like so. And we can take this guy right here, hit Alt, bring that down to change the direction. Then we just click and then readjust this to make our smile. He's a big old happy sun. And the fill, we want to make this the same color as our stroke. Now we want to turn this into something that looks like it was kind of hand drawn. And the classic way of doing that is going to Effects and Presets and doing Turbulent Displace. And that's under Distort, Turbulent Displace. Actually, yeah. Let's create a new adjustment layer and add Turbulent Displace on top of that. And let's make a really small scale. Maybe turn down the amount a little bit. So that way we just roughen up our edges. Now another little detail that we can take a look here is our eyes, they kind of got this little like hard edge over here. We can fix that pretty easily by going into Contents of our face. How about that? And let's call this sun. And how about that? So we can go into our face, go into our contents, go into shape 1, which is this guy right here. Let's twirl that open. Let's twirl the stroke open. And under line cap, we have this set to butt cap. Oh, come on. Let's be mature adults. All right, so we can switch this from butt cap to round cap, which I don't understand that because butts are round. All right, so now we can go into shape 2, stroke 1, and set this to round cap as well. There we go. We fixed our sun. Praise the sun.
If only I could be so grossly incandescent.
All right, so let's take all of these layers and pre-compose them. And we'll call this Sun PC. Now let's go into our glass bottle. Let's really speed this up and let's select our roughen edges. Bring that into our sun comp and let's paste that right on there. All right, so let's duplicate our sun PC and then go in and let's steal our fill from our glass bottle. Let's add that onto that. Bring that on top. And let's play with some of these settings. There you go, something like that, you know. And let's add another paper texture. We'll do 9. Hit S to scale that down. And overlay. Preserve underlying transparency. And let's add a curves to just play around with that, you know? All right, so let's go to our main comp. Go into our project window and let's find our sun comp and let's bring that in. Yay. Now another thing we can do is kind of unify our paper look by adding texture paper number 5 right on top of everything. Scale that down and hit overlay. Now that'll kind of unify everything into one nice little effect. Maybe if we want, we can go in and change some of the coloring here. You know, it's up to you. All right, so changing that, I realized something that I forgot to do here. Let's go to our face. Let's select our contents and shape 1. Let's click on the word fill and change that to none. And then do that for the other eye as well. Again, the word fill, none. There we go. All right, Polystar, let's make that a little more saturated. And this bottom one, let's make that a little more saturated as well. And let's take a look at that. There we go. I like that a little bit better. You know, maybe let's bring down the transparency of our paper texture 5 that we have over everything. All right, so that's basically how I created this paper cutout effect. As you can see, it can be done to just about anything that has an alpha channel, even video. If you wanted to have like footage of somebody walking across a green screen, you can even add the paper cutout to that. Make them look like they're cut out of paper. Ooh. And of course, for tutorial purposes, things were done a little expediently. Some of the settings might not be exact to how it was in the original. In fact, it looks pretty different. The point being, experiment. Experiment with all the settings, see what each individual one really does and how you can make it your own. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit subscribe so that you know when the next tutorial comes out, when we'll be going over the animation for this project. And I'll see you next time.